Well, hello, YouTube. I did just a story video the other day about my trip to North Dakota, and some people watched it, so I figured I'd do another one of those. And this is another travel story. This is one of my favorite stories to tell, to be honest. So, I have to change some details of this, but basically, I went on a trip through the American Southwest, and one of the places that I wanted to go was Tombstone, Arizona. And I really thought, oh, this will be cool, whatever. And we did everything in the fucking town, all the touristy shit, and went to the Birdcage Theater, went to the OK Corral, went and shopped for junk, looked at the one gun store I think that was in Tombstone, did all of that shit, right? Well, as it turns out, in Tombstone, at about 5 or 6 o'clock, they roll up the fucking sidewalks, and it was like 6 or 7 when we went to go get something to eat, and the only place that was open was this steakhouse, and we're like, okay, let's do this. We get in there, and the guys from Tombstone the movie are eating dinner in this fucking steakhouse. The What was their names? Texas Jack and I don't remember his buddy, Turkey Creek Jack Johnson. That was his name. Those two guys in the movie Tombstone are locals that they hired to like play those characters, and they like have a gunfight out on the street every day or some shit, and they eat steak at this steakhouse. So we go in, and there's fucking Hollywood characters sitting there, and we're like, well, shit, the locals eat here. It must be good. We sit down, we wave to them and say hi and whatever, and uh, they did something. I don't remember what they sent over a plate of something because we, said hi or whatever, and they had some sort of deal with the people. It was like a plate of fries or some shit. So, to make a long story short, those fries were the best part of the meal. I don't know how this steakhouse stays in business. I've eaten a lot of steak in my life. I live in Oklahoma. Okay. I have cooked a lot of steak in my life. I cook an excellent steak. I don't know what they did to these. Um, my grandfather was still alive and was on this trip, and his comment on it was, I think they cooked the jockey, which for my grandfather means that this is some sort of horse, possibly, but it's so bad that I think that it's actually the jockey. And they just roasted that up and served it to us. They overcooked them, which is bad on a steak. They were gristly. They had a weird, bad flavor to them. Um, I was putting A1 steak sauce on my fries because the steak wasn't worthy of the A1 steak sauce. I just ate the fries and the steak sauce and had a couple of horrible bites of steak. And the best part was, this was, oh God, what year was this? This would have been in the like late 2000s, early 2010s, and these steaks were $75 a piece. And there were three of us. So we sat there eating, talking. We should have complained. We really should have, but I guess we were too polite and whatever, and the situation, and we were laughing. It was so bad. We were laughing as we were eating, and I'm sure they thought we were having a great time or whatever, but we didn't eat any of those steaks hardly. So we go and say goodbye to the cast of Tombstone, and they were cool dudes. They were in all their get up from the movie. That was pretty cool. I think I got pictures somewhere with them. And we talked to them for quite a while because like my grandfather was there and he's big into Western movies and I was big into Western movies, still am. We had a great time. It was not worth $75 to a steak to eat jockey meat though, which is essentially what they served us. And I don't know what they seasoned those with, but honey, you need help. Um, let's see. From there, now it's like 9 o'clock in Tombstone. And if you thought the sidewalks got rolled up at 5 o'clock in Tombstone, woohoo! You should see it at 9 o'clock. Like we could have had a gunfight in the fucking OK Corral and no one would have noticed. We couldn't find a McDonald's. We looked for fast food. As it turns out, at this time, there was no fast food in Tombstone. And now we're starting to go, oh shit, we're really hungry. We hadn't eaten all day. And we just had like a little plate of fries to share at the fucking steakhouse. And we're just looking and looking and looking. And the only thing we find is a fucking like 7-Eleven, I think it was. It might have been some other gas station. It was some sort of convenience store. And we went in and loaded up on junk food and got some ham sandwiches and fucking went and had a fucking picnic somewhere out in the fucking desert next to Tombstone. I think we were next to that cemetery. I forget the name of the cemetery. It was like Boot Hill Cemetery. We went out by that and had a little picnic of all our fucking junk food. So we figured we might as well go someplace cool since we're in Tombstone. And we're sitting out there in the desert next to all the tombstones and shit, fucking eating our ham sandwiches, thinking about the, I don't know, $225 plus we just fucking threw down the drain at the local steakhouse. And that was pretty much my experience in Tombstone, Arizona. From there, we went back to the hotel slept that night and got up early the next morning. And there's one other thing. We hit a cafe on the way out of town. I don't remember the name of this cafe, but it was like the only one there. And it's been so long now, it's probably not even still open. But it was like a breakfast place. And it was packed. It was packed full of locals. So we went there thinking, okay, fool us once. Okay. But like this one looks like it's doing business. Because the other place had those guys in it and those guys alone. And I think they got different steaks than us. And somehow I think their steaks were free. I think that was their whole bit, was they got to go there and have good steak cooked for free and go, ha, we're the, people from the movie. And then you trick people to come eat horse meat or jockey or whatever the fuck it was. God, that was bad. Anyway, the breakfast is typical, Southern American biscuits and gravy, fucking sausage and bacon and eggs and all that kind of shit. And it was great. And honestly, after the food experience of the last, 24 to 48 hours, that was the best food I'd ever had. Because, like, we were still hungry after the ham sandwiches and Reese's peanut butter cups that we had in the desert. I forget what else we did in Tombstone that day after that. Tombstone itself is cool. I want to talk about that a little bit while we're here. The main drag of Tombstone looks like something out of the 1800s still. All little shops and towns and stuff, and like, it's just cool. Like, if I was going to pick any one place to go on vacation in America, my choice would be Arizona, and I would see multiple things. I would see Tombstone, and I would see the Grand Canyon, and like the Hoover Dam. And then there's a handful of other things that are cool in Arizona that I like too, like the Petrified Forest and whatever. But like, to me, the coolest of all of those is Tombstone because of the history. I like cowboy stuff, and I like guns. I like gunfights, and that place is just dripping in that shit. And it was cool to actually be there. It's one of those trips that if you are going to take a cheap trip someplace, take a road trip through the American Southwest and see a couple of these famous places. Like you could see, Dodge City and Tombstone and, trying to think of some other places that are in between those two. There's a whole bunch of shit in between those two that's fucking cool. But what the Santa Fe Trail, the Oregon Trail, would be big ones that I'd want to see. All the battlefields, like Custer's Last Stand and shit like that. All these make great road trips. And like, just pick some cool stuff to do in between. That's how I grew up doing shit. And like this Tombstone trip with my grandfather was one of the last things I ever did with him. That was a road trip kind of thing because his health kind of started going downhill after that. Uh, I loved that trip, and I would highly recommend anyone go to Tombstone. Just whatever you do, if you see a steakhouse with famous people in it, run the other way. Don't eat there. That's my advice on Tombstone. Thanks for listening.